Howdy. I have a question for you. Or rather, you should just ask yourself this question. What is it that you're really most afraid of in this life? And it doesn't really have to be complicated or like this deep thing. It could be as simple as, just running out of money or feeling like, you're going to lose people, like being alone, or just even being afraid of being invalidated, things like that, or just, other people mistreating you. Whatever it may be that you're afraid of, I want you to just think about it for a minute and think about the ways that it potentially holds you back from doing what you'd want to do if that fear wasn't there. And it sounds like it can be a bit like wishful thinking, but literally just imagine, what would you do if you knew you didn't have to be afraid of running out of money? Or what would you do if you knew you didn't have to be afraid of ending up homeless or something? Because a lot of people, they live their lives just so anxiously, so full of fear, and I mean, I've been one of them, thinking that you have to do things a certain way in order for your life to be successful or in order for you to be safe and happy. And a lot of it just isn't really true. A lot of it is actually the opposite of true. The reason I'm making this video is I recently decided to just quit my job and just start traveling. I literally sold everything that I owned, which wasn't much, but a computer and just some of my items that were worth something. And just doing that made me realize that I've never really actually wanted or gotten joy out of having stuff, if that makes sense. I found that I used buying items as a coping mechanism for the fact that my life wasn't at all what I wanted it to be, and just buying things is what was marketed towards me as something that would allow me to be happy, but even though deep down I knew that wasn't really true. And it was interesting because even though initially I thought it would be hard to part with some things, the more I just started getting rid of things and selling things, the lighter I really felt and the less burdened I felt. And it really, a lot of it came down to being as simple as I don't have to move this stuff anymore if I were to need to leave or move. And it makes me realize that a lot of people are so paralyzed by their things and by even their home or their apartment, and thinking that they have to have those things and hold on to those things in order to be happy. But in reality, it's not true at all. It's just something that prolongs your actual happiness, which I feel like for most people, at least most young people today, they just want to be free, it's not really money and stuff that you actually want. It's most likely that you want to just have to not, it's most likely that you just want to be free from all that stuff and to not have to worry about anything, and just so you can do whatever you feel like, But the way that this reality, this society is it ingrains something in us that makes us feel like that's unreasonable, or even just the idea of being homeless being so terrifying. I've gone, most of my life, but especially my whole life since I moved out of my parents' house, just being terrified of the idea of ending up on the streets or just any kind of homelessness. And it always felt like it always felt like a ticking clock counting down to when I would end up losing everything and just, ending up pushing a shopping cart along the sidewalk and being a mess, But in reality, that fear is really important because it's a signal of the thing that you actually need to face in order to be happy. Because, I mean, for years and years, I've spent so long just working jobs that I actually hated, and, having a little bit of free time outside of work, but usually being too exhausted to do anything in that free time, just so that I could, just so I can sleep in a box on a bed, because that feels safe, And I realized that none of that stuff, like, even the idea of being homeless and even the idea of dying to me is actually less scary than the idea of having to live a full life doing things that I didn't want to do, if that makes sense. Like, I would honestly rather just take my chances with whatever happens than stick to what's safe and, follow my anxiety into like a job that I just absolutely hate, but that I stick to my whole life. And then I'm sure I'd end up being, retired or on my deathbed or whatever. And I just think to myself, like, what was even all of that for? Like, I mean, sure, I survived, but I didn't do anything really that I wanted to do. And so just thinking about things like that is kind of what pushed me to do what I've done recently, which is literally like I just sold everything and I packed up essentials in my old Honda Accord and I just drove off. I still don't really know where I'm going or what I'm doing, but I mean, I feel more free than I've ever felt before. And a lot of it is because I'm not scared anymore of the main things that I was afraid of. Like, the first few nights I slept just in my car in like Cracker Barrel parking lots, and like right now I'm in, just a cheap motel. But I'm realizing that all of the things that I was afraid of literally weren't true. And like, I'm sure if I made a bunch of really horrible decisions the moment I moved out and, like I immediately just got on drugs or something, I'm sure I would end up like a lot of the homeless people that you see just on the streets. But you don't have to do those things. Like, you don't have to choose the things that cause you to end up there, if that makes sense. It's so much easier and simple than people might realize to just not live somewhere that requires rent, And I mean, you can even still pay for places to stay. I mean, like, I've obviously paid to stay here, but like, you don't have to feel so trapped by the idea of like leases and just making a solid commitment for, like 6 months to a year. And like, because that also causes you to worry about like, okay, well, what if at some point I lose my income and I'm not able to pay the rent eventually? It's like, stuff like that is stuff that I just don't really have to worry about in the situation I'm in right now. And like, even though there's a lot of comforts that maybe I don't have access to, like, maybe I don't always have access to like a super nice shower, or like, I don't always have access to a comfortable bed, but being able to just go around on a whim, just going to see like national parks or just going to see something fun, whatever I feel like doing, and also just being able to spend time just chilling in, just like a room like this or in my car, and not having to worry about a dead-end job to go back to that's gonna like steal away any happiness that I managed to get on my time off. I just don't have to worry about that anymore. And I still support myself by doing like things like DoorDash, and I'm hoping to be able to support myself eventually by doing this. But I'm just reaching a point where I really don't care too much about what happens, because I've realized that I've truly been okay no matter what's happened. Like, even though, I've reached some very low points in my life, particularly mentally, but also in some pretty horrible physical situations. And thinking back to those times, and maybe there's times in your life that you can think back to that maybe you thought you couldn't even have made it through. Thinking about those times has made me realize how resilient we really are as people. And I mean, we are so used to our creature comforts in this day and age, but like, a lot of that, it can be very convenient to have those things, but a lot of the time those things are just holding you back if you feel completely dependent on them. And I know in this video I'm going more into like the idea of, losing money and like losing your place that you live and just having to, go out on the streets. There's all types of situations that you may be afraid of, but that facing them might actually be a huge benefit to you. Like, there's an example that I think of where, I don't know if it's like some Native American saying or whatever, but the deer, when they see the storm coming, they run away from it, and they constantly have to keep running from the storm because the storm follows them. But the buffalo, when they see the storm, they literally just charge through it because they know that that's the quickest way to pass through the other side to not have to deal with the storm anymore. And I think that's really what a lot of it comes down to, is like, what is that storm that you're always running from in your life? What is that thing that never lets you have a break? What's that thing that doesn't allow you to be your true authentic self because it's always looming over you, and it's just exhausting, you know? I guess just what I'm asking is really think about what that thing may be, whether, whether it's going homeless or whether it's losing your relationships, losing your family even. Think about the idea of, if you were to face that storm, how would you handle it? Because I'm sure you've been through things that other people probably wouldn't be able to handle. And I will say something that helps with this, just with the idea of facing or even like determining what your actual fears are. And I know it's like, for a lot of young people especially, this idea is something that people just aren't really attracted to, but spirituality or some kind of faith or just something like that, like a belief in a higher power, or even just, if you like using like tarot cards or crystals or whatever it is that you may like, if you're a Buddhist, using something like that really helps. And even if it's just, a psychological thing, even if you don't necessarily truly believe that, miracles can happen, you can actually make your own form of miracles happen just by tapping into the effects, the psychological effects that using those tools has on you. Because I feel like, for me, it was as simple as just, I started praying again, and like, I was raised a fundamentalist Christian, and I left the church, and I had, what was like, I'd consider my angry atheist phase for a while. And then slowly I started to just discover more and more, just, I don't know, my own authentic truth and what I feel about the universe, if that makes any sense. And it's a very interesting journey. But effectively, what I started doing was, I began praying, and, it doesn't really matter who you pray to, just, I started praying for some kind of guidance, or some kind of like signs or signals on just a direction to go. Because before I had done what I'm doing now, before I just packed up and left home, I was really just kind of aimless. Like, I felt like the only things that I knew about my life were the things that I didn't want, Like, I knew that I didn't want to have to work a dead-end job. I knew that I didn't want to have to deal with the stress of constantly finding like an apartment or a house or just some kind of place to stay in. And just, I knew everything that I didn't want my life to be about. And I didn't really know how to start finding what I want my life to be about. And I feel like a lot of people could potentially relate to that, because, this world can really beat you down and make you feel hopeless, like, especially if you're a young person and you've, if you've been through certain things. I understand that it can feel like hopeless, and like this world is a place that's not even worth being in. But it really is worth it in the end. And really, the thing that isn't worth it isn't being in this world. The thing that isn't worth it is giving into your fear of this world. Because really, when it comes down to it, there is nothing to fear. And I plan on making more videos in the future going into, my ideas of spirituality and just the various things that I use to help me in my life. But some kind of practice, even if it's something like magic or just using meditation, whatever just fits your being, whatever like resonates with you, just give it a try. Even if it seems like it won't really do anything, just start trying it. Start praying, or start meditating, or start, practicing mantras, or doing some kind of rituals, or whatever it is that gets you started and that gets you exploring your own authenticity. Because another thing that I feel like happens in this world is people are very beat down by others' expectations, and they feel like they have to fit into this box that other people create for them. Like, other people may know you as a specific person. Like, this person is James, or this person is Sally, and like these are the things that I know about them. And if you change things about that, or even like especially if you decide to change your beliefs or start, using some kind of like, even if it's like a religious practice or magic thing, people may start to think that they'll start to get concerned because they're afraid of seeing that person that they've pictured you as change or not be true in their minds. And a lot of that comes from, it's not just that they're like in love with an old version of you, or with a version of you that is catered towards them or something, but a lot of it too is that seeing other people change in that way, it makes them feel uncomfortable because it points out to them ways in which they could potentially change that they're not. And so you might, if you start doing these things, you could face some animosity from people that you know. But the most important thing, I think, is to just maintain your own integrity in it, and to not, and this is very hard, and this is something that, I had to like pray and do a lot of practices about to get to this point. But a lot of it comes down to genuinely just not caring what other people think, and not reacting to what other people say or what other people want from you. And I'm telling you, like, if you start to do that, people probably won't like it at first, but you'll realize how powerful you truly are, and other people will start to recognize that power. And so just, I don't know, start tapping into that power in whatever means necessary. And I know this video was kind of just all over the place, like I didn't have any kind of script, I just kind of started talking. But if this resonated with you at all, or if you feel it helped you at all, if you're in any kind of situation where you just feel stuck, or like you don't know what to do, or like you're just afraid of life and you feel like you'd rather just not be here, just, I don't know, let me know in the comments how this video resonated. But thank you very much, and stay light.